Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, I can always hear you. It's a video, but yes, we can hear it.
Okay. Well, that quick video is a short summary of what some of our survivors experience. Domestic violence does not matter of age. Oftentimes, our survivors feel trapped and they don't know where to go, who to go to, and quite frankly, how to start their lives over. So one of the tools that we utilize when we go out to our families is the ability to pack a go bag. And in most cases, most of us aren't prepared to pack up our lives and ship on out or know what to take or what to do. When we go out to these families and we're having conversations with them and we're explaining these things, it can sound very foreign to imagine packing up your whole life and also being discreet about it and understanding that there may be a day that your survivor decides that they actually want to leave, and what does that process actually look like. Our goal is to go out and at least offer some tools. A go bag is a tool that we can utilize, keeping in mind that we're asking people to prepare their children and themselves to possibly flee and what that process will look like. It isn't always pretty, and oftentimes that is why a lot of our survivors have stayed in some of their situations, because they don't understand what the future will look like, and that can be very scary. A lot of the disasters that we prepare for are the natural disasters, the things that happen that we can't control, which are chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. And those are great things to prepare for on a very large scale. But in a lot of cases, these things may not happen to us in our lifetime, or they may happen once in our lifetime. What our survivors often experience are man-made disasters, which are crime and civil disorder. Domestic violence is considered a civil crime, and if a person has the opportunity of being charged criminally, they may catch some type of assault charge. Oftentimes, domestic violence is played down, and the penalties may or may not be what our survivors expect. But it doesn't mean that the impact on their life isn't great. Oftentimes, our survivors fear a lot of other things depending on who they're living with. They have become an expert on this person. So they may feel as though they're experiencing all of these things listed on this list. They may have fear that the person will cause some serious harm to them. They may have fear that the person will cause harm to other people. They may have fear that the person is stalking them through their social media and phone and all different types of things. So the fear that has been created in them is very great. And it's hard to just physically leave when you have all of these fears that this person will haunt you for the rest of your life, and that no matter where you go, you won't be safe. When we have these grand disasters, we create all of these kits and we tell people if you have all of these things, you should be fine to survive. And those are good things to survive physically if you're experiencing some type of disaster. But when you're speaking of survivors who are experiencing domestic violence and they need to restart their life somewhere, maybe go to a shelter, maybe go stay with a family member that is 1,200 miles away, uproot their children, change their jobs, change their entire life so that they can flee the abuse that they're experiencing. It's not as easy as getting a rope and a compass and possibly some sunscreen. You have to think about other things that this person may need when they're fleeing, and they need to be able to move forward with their life. So a survival kit for a natural disaster is great, but a kit for our victims who are attempting to flee needs to look a little different. We have to keep in mind that things that we probably don't think about that often, such as birth certificates and social security cards, you may not even know where they are. It's vital that our survivors have access to those documents. Sometimes survivors hide those documents or they are put in a place that they don't have access to. Trying to obtain these things can be a very difficult process with getting social services and or benefits, a job, housing. So having these records is essential when you're packing a go bag. So a lot of the things that are listed on here are things that may or may not be in a purse, but definitely things that are somewhere in the home. Having a copy of those things helps greatly. One of the most important things on this list is a set of spare keys. Oftentimes, we have a lot of cars that have a lot of digital upgrades, and we may not have the keys on us at all times. If you're purchasing newer cars, they may not even give you a spare set of keys. So having a spare set of keys makes the world of difference in being able to actually escape a person physically. If there's a person who's undocumented or has some type of immigration status, having those documents could be vital to them actually getting some supportive services. An abuser can withhold those type of documents and make it very uncomfortable for a person in those circumstances because they may fear deportation. They don't know what is going to happen. Having your custody papers on you in your possession in this go bag matters because there's oftentimes that abusers like to utilize law enforcement to intimidate survivors and getting them to return home. If a child has been placed on that restraining order, they're protected by that restraining order. So it's vital that that order is kept in that go bag. Having access to cash and prepaid cards, we all know that credit cards can be tracked and that it's very easy for a person to find out where you are. Also having prepaid cell phones or phones that have a separate contract. With technology we have these days between an iPhone and an Android phone, your entire location can be tracked. A lot of agencies such as the DVSA has access to Go phones, we call them, and there are phones that simply will call 911. There are a lot of law enforcement agencies in a lot of areas that are willing to donate those phones to local organizations who assist victims in fleeing. As long as a phone is charged, it can call 911. It may not be able to call anyone else, but it can call 911 and at least get a signal to where your physical location is. A lot of times we have victims who experience mental health and their medications may be restricted from them. It's important that survivors know what medication they are taking and they have access to the prescriptions. In the event they need to have an emergency prescription filled, they're able to do so if they are on the run. It's very important to keep a go bag somewhere that can be easily accessible. Whether it's at a friend or a family's house or somewhere in the home, it needs to be easily accessible. It needs to be something that can be hidden in plain sight, that your abuser will not pay attention to. Your abuser will overlook it. Oftentimes, when we're out on these visits and we're having conversations with survivors, they prefer to shield their children from these conversations. But it's actually important that the children actually know what this process is because they are experiencing it. So no matter how loud you turn your TV up or turn your dryer and washing machine on, the children hear the arguments, they see what's going on. So making them a part of this process, just as though we would with a tornado preparation or any type of emergency response, it's important that the children are also included in this process in the event they needed to flee. We ensure that we communicate with our survivors that in the event they need to flee, that they need to make one trip out of the door. Multiple trips back and forth can become dangerous. Oftentimes you see this with families who have younger children. There's car seats and diaper bags and all type of things that are trying to be accessed before a person flees. And that oftentimes makes situations very dangerous. In the event a person isn't able to keep these things in the trunk of their car or near their front door, we try to figure out a reasonable location that these documents can be left in with this bag. If possible, each person should have at least 3 pair of clothes and everything listed on this list. Um, Also having a spare charger for the phone and a full tank of gas or access to some gas card in the car in the go bag somewhere that could easily put gas in the car, because fleeing and stopping places can cause situations that are unsafe. Especially in rural areas, you may get to an area where the gas stations are closed. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your gas full, that you're communicating your plan with your worker in the event you needed to flee, what that would look like. These are things that we have to think about when we're talking to our survivors. Plans are necessary. Oftentimes we fail because we don't have secure plans. And having these conversations with our survivors makes it a real situation. Although they've been experiencing this, they have oftentimes not prepared what will my fleeing look like and how do I do that. So us having these conversations with them gives them a realistic plan to prepare. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Ms. Ebony,
Yes, ma'am.
what is one of the main questions that you get when you're talking about fleeing? Is there a specific like question that you kind of get more often than not?
Most survivors want to know where can they go. So oftentimes that whole process of, if I leave, where do I go?
Okay.
Having access to shelters is essential. We know the larger cities have shelters, but oftentimes the smaller areas may not have as much bed space or may not have bed space at all. So us collaborating, we also have the Safe Shelter Collaborative that the DVSA participates in. I have the link at the end of this presentation. Us working together and collaborating, trying to ensure that if a person does need to flee, they have a safe place to go to. That's often what fears a lot of survivors the most, is that they don't have anywhere to go. They have been estranged from their family for so long. Oftentimes they're ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, where do I go when I leave? And what does that look like? That is the number one question for most survivors that I've experienced.
Gotcha. And I kind of thought that was the question. I just didn't want to make the assumption that it was universal across all counties or all, across the country. But I thought that would be the universal question of where do I go? And so viable resources. So what if they say they don't want to go to a shelter, but I still want to go? Or if the only shelter that's available does not meet their needs, what is your next go to?
So we ask, our first question is, what do they want to do? So in most cases, our clients are being referred by DCS because they've had a DCS referral. So we don't work for DCS specifically. That's the reason we're collaborated. So we don't tell clients where to go. We ask them, where do they want to go? So if there's a family member that's in Kansas, or if there is a friend that is somewhere that they would like to go to, we try to collaborate with agencies and see if we can get resources to help them get where they feel is safe.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now that funding may be limited and there may be a process, it may not be immediate. There's actually a young lady that I'm working with right now that's finishing her master's degree at MTSU. And our plan is to assist her in moving to California with her family once she's finished with her program. She doesn't want to end her program in the middle of the semester. That's her choice. She feels as though she can maintain her safety and her child's safety. but she does need financial assistance with getting a one-way plane ticket to California. So as of right now, that's her safety plan. She's already packed her go bags. She understands that she can't take everything from a 2-bedroom apartment on a one-way plane ticket, and that's her plan. That's what she chooses to do. And our goal is to help her with it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions? So when is a good time to plan this? I would say when we initially get a referral to go out to any family, or we experience a family that is in need of our services. So the only time we're connected is because something has happened, right? So when we get a referral, one of our initial conversations should be, when are we going to pack this go bag and what does it look like? Packing a go bag is part of a safety plan. So regardless if any of our clients choose to engage in any services that we offer, whether they decide we're going to work it out, this was an isolated incident, things are going okay, we're going to work on our relationship, whatever they choose to decide, that is their choice. But if we can encourage them to create a safety plan of, in the event something happens again, what options do I have? What is going on in this situation? Oftentimes, if they're sitting with a liaison and go over this plan, they can help identify some of the things that have happened and ways that they can prevent either themselves from being harmed again, or create a plan of what to do if it happens again. We all very well know the likelihood of it happening again is high, but it's still their choice. So creating a safety plan, it's a detailed plan of what happens when they're having conversations with their abuser, whether it's on the phone or face to face. We encourage them to create a code word for their family and friends, counselors, anyone who's involved in this process, so that that person knows to contact help. We encourage all survivors to never make threats to contact law enforcement. If you are going to contact law enforcement, you contact them. You never make threats to do that. We encourage survivors to never engage in conversations where they're cornered in a room. So always make sure they have an exit. Make sure that they are not in any shape, fashion, or form endangering themselves more by having a conversation in a basement or in a bathroom or anywhere that they don't have access to be able to remove themselves from that location. Going over this also makes it real because we've already received the referral. We know this has happened. So we're not talking about what we think, we're talking about what we already know. So having them engage in this plan puts the power in their hands. In the event they feel like a fight is coming on, how do they lower the risk of themselves getting hurt if they're out in public, or if they're at home, if they're at work? How do they feel they could minimize the risk for themselves? Try to identify a person that they trust. In the event that there's text messages or phone calls, voicemails, or things like that, they should save them in the event that they need to utilize those with applying for orders of protection. Those documents, or I don't know the exact format, but they can be emailed. And so that's essential in having evidence with moving forward with a case in the event that it's criminal, or if there's issues of child custody. You want them to have access to this information. Who is a friend? What's the friend's name? What's the friend's number? What relative they trust? What coworker? What counselor? Where is their nearest shelter? These are things you want to discuss with them so that they know what options they have. They may choose to go into shelter. They may choose to not go into shelter, but you want to talk to them about what options they have, what routes they should take when they're traveling, especially if they live in rural areas. You want to communicate about staying in well-lit areas. You want to explain to them about any support groups or survivor groups that are in their area. The local police department, there's non-emergencies numbers as well as 911. You want them to know if your agency is connected with an attorney or counselors, whatever supports are available to the client, you want them to have those and have access to those. So that in the event there's a situation, you may not be able to answer the phone all the time, but do they have access to the resources? Because again, this is their choice. Where do you store your go bag? You keep your go bag somewhere you can easily access it if you have to leave in a hurry. Some ideas might be in the trunk of your car or near your front door at a trusted friend's house. Try to keep your phone charged and your gas full if all possible. This is essential. That bag has to be as discreet as a grandmother's heirloom sitting in a china cabinet. It just has to blend in. It cannot stick out like a sore thumb. If you have children, utilizing book bags as go bags sometimes can be very discreet. If you have a baby, utilizing a diaper bag as a go bag can blend in. You don't want it to be obvious. If you all share cars, keeping the go bag in the car isn't a good option. Oftentimes having that bag somewhere that is stable. So you don't want to leave it at a friend's house that gets evicted a lot because you don't want your vital records in those places. You may not want to even communicate to your friend or family member what is all in there, but ask them, can you keep it there? There's locks that you can place on your bags so that the bags won't be open. There are some towns that allow the county clerk's office to store your vital records as well. Retrieving vital records after they have been lost can be quite troublesome, especially if there have been adoptions, name changes, if you're born in different states, different countries. So keeping those on them at all times is essential. It is so hard to get those documents after things have been lost. The turnaround time for a Social Security card is at least 10 business days, and that's only if you have a hard copy ID. To get a hard copy ID, you need a birth certificate. To get a birth certificate, you need an ID. There's so many different hoops that a person has to jump through, and we're keeping in mind that this person has just experienced some type of trauma. So, trying to make important decisions from a state of trauma can be very difficult. So any way we can reduce the stress that they're experiencing, we want to, and that is with creating a safe plan prior to. In so many cases, returning to the home once you leave is not an option. The doors may be locked. The person, if they don't work, they may be at the home. So it's not always safe to go back. Once you're involved in law enforcement, sometimes it can be helpful, sometimes it cannot. It can increase your risk of harm. So you want to consider when you are fleeing, take what you need. At a later date, you may be able to contact law enforcement and go back and retrieve your items. And even when that is done, it's not going to be a 4-hour process of retrieving all of your items. That's not how that looks. So law enforcement's job is to respond to emergencies. They don't have the time to get involved in civil matters. Going to court and having a judge order a set time to retrieve your items. And again, that's not something that takes days. So they're not going to say, well, you have 10 days to get everything out, and this person has to leave the home until you do that. It's going to be a realistic plan. So we want to ensure that our survivors are making these plans prior to. What things will they be able to leave? What things do they absolutely need to take with them? We have any questions? So how a person leaves. There are several agencies that have collaborated to ensure that we are making leaving safe. We have Safe at Home, which is a state program that offers the ability to offer confidentiality to our victims. So once they leave, we have ways to protect a survivor's confidentiality to make things a little better. It does not 100% take all safety um, to the extreme, because oftentimes our survivors actually tell their abusers where they are. So, we can hide their address and try to prevent things as much as possible. But in the event they disclose where they are and disclose where they're living, it kind of counteracts a lot of these programs. But again, all services are their choice. There is a link at the top. I'll also send that later on. Um, we have a training that is available to do, and so that we can aid and assist our clients with the Safe at Home program. Not all of our survivors will qualify, but the website has all the information to explain how and what has to be done to participate in that program. The state of Tennessee has also implemented several other programs, like the Safe Bar program. The Safe Bar program aids in minimizing human trafficking, sexual assault, as well as domestic violence. And so there are several restaurants and bars who have participated in this program to be able to understand and identify what needs to be done in the event there is a survivor needing support in the community. There's also the Signal for Help campaign that has been launched, and it's been shared throughout social media and a bunch of other agencies that express how to ask for help and how bystanders should respond to anyone trying to communicate their need for help. Oftentimes, our survivors are limited for their community involvement in their engagement. They've been isolated. So there are grocery stores who understand how to respond to the signal for help. There are beauty salons and nail salons that understand how to respond to the signal for help. There's been several agencies in Rutherford County who have taken the training, and if you're out and about at salons and nail salons and beauty shops, you may see their training certificate posted, and that means that they've taken these trainings so they understand how to respond to any type of violence that a person is experiencing, and they know what to do to aid in any type of way. So with collaborative efforts with the state and all of these other nonprofit agencies, everyone is working together to ensure that our survivors not only have the ability to flee, they know what to do when they're fleeing, and we assist them with getting it done. So whether it's financial support or shelter, law enforcement, legal support, the agencies are working together to try to minimize the violence that all of our survivors are experiencing. And it's their choice to do these. Most of these agencies outside of law enforcement, we function on a basis of client-centered services. So we can't force a client to do any of these things. This has to be something they want to do. What law enforcement has the ability to do is beyond us, and what the courts have the ability to do is beyond us. But our collaborative efforts hopefully will reduce the violence that families have been experiencing and give a realistic support to be able to flee this violence and get community support so that they can start their lives and reduce their barriers that they've experienced. These are a couple of links for different types of abuse, as well as the Travelers Aid International Program. A lot of agencies in various states participate in this program. It was started, I believe, in the 40s or 50s to help families navigate throughout our country. And there are services available to help our clients in the event they needed to flee and not only leave their city, but maybe their state. Also, a different country. Sometimes people are trafficked from various countries and they need assistance with relocating back or getting somewhere else safe. The DVSA participates in Safe Shelter Collaborative, which is a site that has various shelters that are located throughout the state of Tennessee and a few other states. And it's the ability to actually, have your bed spaces posted and try as best as we can to get the turnaround for getting beds and getting clients out of their situations into safety as fast as possible. I'll send those links after we're finished. If anyone has any questions. I am based out of Rutherford County. I'm the liaison here. I've been with the program for going on 3 years. Nancy and I have been, I guess, here the longest out of everyone. We enjoy what we do as best as we can. We participate in all pre-service trainings with new DCS workers so that they understand domestic violence and what to do, when to do. I am eager to work with everyone. I believe I met a lot of you all at the onboarding that happened a couple months ago. In the event I can be of any assistance, don't hesitate to call. Just ensure that when you're out there, you're making sure that your services are survivor focused. This has to be something they want to do, or you won't get the buy-in that you expect. And just realistically, some of our clients will not want to work with us, and that's okay. This is their choice. This is what they want to do. They don't need one more choice taken away from them. Our job is to offer them the resources so that in the event they did want to leave, they know what to do. They know where to go. They know how to go, and we're there to be of assistance. We will leave government agencies to handle their part, but we're here to offer support. We're not here to tell anyone that they have to go in the shelter or their kids will be taken away if they don't go, or they don't flee, or if they don't leave this person. This is their choice. Our job is to ensure that they have the resources to make good choices and whatever that choice looks like. So if anyone has any questions, I can answer them. I believe my phone number and all that stuff is in our Google Drive. So if you ever need me, reach out, call, text, send a kite, anything, I'm available.
It looked like Amanda had her hand up, Ebony. You may not can see it.
Hi, Amanda. Did you have any questions?
I think she was doing like the reaction applause.
Yes, I was giving you a big clap. I enjoyed it
Yay.
so much. So I appreciate you very much for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, feel free to unmute and give your thanks and congratulations and all those wonderful things. Thank you, Ebony, for doing this for us. We greatly appreciate it. I've heard a lot about this, coming up to it. So they were pretty excited about being on here with you today. So it was a good opportunity for everybody.
Thank you. And I have had the wonderful experience. There are a lot of churches who have aided in assisting us with packing go bags, sororities. I mean, you name it. All we have to do is tell them what we need. I mean, things that we may not always think about. We think of sanitary napkins, deodorant, just things. Everyone needs money, but there's always other physical things that aid our families. Those phones are wonderful. Having the ability to call 911, it can save a person. Yeah. Sometimes our families live in very rural areas and their access to services is not always easy. our agency had a training with law enforcement for the state of Tennessee. And there was a whole lot of information provided to law enforcement so that they have realistic ideas of what shelters can provide. And they now know what shelters are available in their areas so that we all can collaborate together and not just expect that a person will get 3 hours away in an Uber. I mean, they don't, if they had that money, they probably wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. So
That's so true.
but I will give you all back the rest of your day. I have a survey that Jody is going to send out. Please complete the survey. And have a good Wednesday.
Thank you, Ebony. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony.
Thanks.
As per usual, Miss Evans.